Hi friends, Dr. Ben, not a real doctor here. Today we're going to talk about something that's going to help you better evaluate information you find. The title of this video is I Disagree with Your Premise. And before we get too far into this, let's talk about what a premise is. Got a handy little definition here just so I don't skip anything. So, a premise is a proposition upon which an argument is based or from which a conclusion is drawn. So a premise is an important part of a logical argument. And there's a reason you need to understand logical arguments, and that's because if you don't, you might end up not getting to the root of the problem or actually getting the information you want. So I'm going to use an example here. We're going to pick on one of my favorite things here, calories. So the common premise here in the nutritional world and really the health, wellness, everything world is that excess calories make you fat. So that's the premise. People gain weight from an excess of calories, right? And why is that important? Because a lot of our arguments, a lot of our research, a lot of our information is based on that premise, right? We'll talk about what's best for losing weight, a low carb diet, a high fat diet, a low fat diet, a high protein diet. All of that stuff is arguing on how best to meet our caloric needs. So that is accepting the premise that excess calories make you fat, which is fine if you agree with that premise. Now, before we get lost in the weeds, don't get hung up on whether or not you believe in calorie counting or not. That's not what this is about. This is about understanding the argument, being able to break it apart so that you can understand if information is relevant to you or if information has been structured in a way that actually makes it good information. So, in this case, if we are talking about, a low-fat diet is the best way to meet your caloric needs, what that means is that in order to argue that a low-fat diet is best to meet your caloric needs, you have to accept that excess calories make you fat is true. If not, then there's no point in arguing that a low-fat diet is the best way to meet your caloric needs, right? Now, where this becomes a problem is if that premise is not true or if you disagree with that premise, right? So if you're someone who believes that counting calories is BS, then it really doesn't matter what's best, a low fat, low carb, a macro diet. All of those are coming from the standpoint that you're trying to reduce calories or meet a specific number of calories, right? Where the problem comes in the bigger picture is that very often these premises become entrenched in scientific research and common knowledge in general, right? So everybody just accepts that excess calories make you gain weight. And if we never go back and examine that premise, the foundational piece of information that all the other information is built on, we could potentially be missing a lot of other possible options, right? So in the case of this particular premise, if we go back and we want to re-examine that premise of calories being the foundational problem, what if we for a second said, you know what, maybe it's not calories, maybe it could be something else. Maybe it could be a metabolic thing, hormones. Maybe it could be excess toxins. Maybe it could be a lack of sleep, right? There are all kinds of other possibilities that open when you start looking at different premises. And that's not to say that the caloric thing is necessarily false. Nutrition is extremely complicated. It's likely a large number of things that are at play. But for the case of logical arguments, there has to be some sort of foundational premise that everything else stems from. And if you do not agree with that premise, well, then everything that comes after is kind of null and void because you don't believe the foundational piece of information that everything else is built on. This is why it's very, very important when you're getting new information to see if you even agree with the foundation that the new information is built on. And like I said earlier, if you start to argue different points within that premise, well, you are automatically giving validity to the premise. I know for some of you, this may be really high level stuff, but this is really important to know and to be able to do to evaluate information that's coming towards you. Another one that I really like is it has to do with hydration. And the premise would be that minor levels of dehydration negatively affect athletic performance, right? When you're working out, drink as much water as you can tolerate as often as possible. That was what we were taught in personal training school as well as in college. We were also kind of taught that the human body is not smart enough to know when it's getting dehydrated, under the statement that once you're thirsty, it's already too late, you're already dehydrated, which is all fine and good if you agree that moderate levels of dehydration negatively affect athletic performance. However, if you don't agree with that, there's no point in arguing how much water to drink during a workout, what to drink during a workout, how often to drink during a workout, because you don't agree that minor levels of dehydration cause athletic performance negative effects, right? Really interesting topic. If you want to go more into that, I recommend Waterlogged by Dr. Timothy Noakes. But you can cut out a lot of BS, a lot of arguing, simply by saying, I don't agree that dehydration negatively affects performance. There's nothing else to argue about at that point. You can argue about whether or not dehydration affects athletic performance, but there's no point in arguing about what to drink, when to drink, or how often to drink during exercise. So not really a workout kind of thing today, a critical thinking kind of thing, but with all the information that's out there, I think this is a vastly underrated skill to have. It's absolutely essential to be able to evaluate this stuff as you're reading it. A lot of times you can eliminate information in the first paragraph if you can do this. You start reading and you're like, oh, I don't agree with even the foundation of what this person is writing about, so everything else doesn't matter. It can also eliminate a lot of frustration. You can read a lot of articles that just kind of make you angry because you don't agree with the basis. And don't waste your time. There's no sense in getting angry about stuff like that. Anyway, that's what I got for you guys today. Not workout related, but the goal of working myself out of a job eventually. I feel like this is a really important skill for you guys to have. If you have questions about this sort of thing, if you'd like to go more in depth, if you have points you'd like to share, always love to hear them. Hit me up in the comments down below. If you like the video, smash that thumbs up button. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing. And until next time, keep your life in motion.